The Stone Monastery, a Highland bedtime story in 5 chapters. Chapter 1. Before Dawn, waking in the silence of stone. You wake slowly, in the deep silence of stone. The monastery sleeps around you, ancient walls of Scottish granite holding the darkness like a gentle embrace. Your small cell is carved from the living rock of the Highland mountain, smooth walls worn by centuries of prayer and contemplation. Outside, the wind moves softly through the heather. You lie still on your simple wooden cot, feeling the weight of the woolen blanket woven from sheep that graze these very hillsides. The wool still carries the scent of mountain air and wild thyme, and the distant salt of the sea that crashes far below against the rocky coast. The stone beneath your feet is cold, but not harsh. It has been warmed by countless brothers who have walked these floors before you, their footsteps wearing smooth paths in the granite. This monastery has stood here since the year 1147, when Scottish stonemasons carved it from the mountain itself, using techniques passed down from the Romans who once walked these lands. In the darkness, you can hear the soft breathing of your fellow monks in their cells nearby. Brother Alistair in the cell to your right, his gentle snoring mixing with the whisper of wind through the narrow windows. Brother Hamish to your left, turning quietly in his sleep, the rustle of his rough habit like autumn leaves. You sit up slowly, your bare feet touching the stone floor. The cold seeps up through your skin, grounding you, connecting you to this ancient place. The flagstones were quarried from the same mountain on which you now rest, each stone cut by hand, fitted together without mortar, held in place by the weight of centuries and the skill of craftsmen whose names are forgotten, but whose work endures. Through the narrow window of your cell, you can see the first hint of dawn touching the peaks of Ben Nevis in the distance. The mountain stands like a sleeping giant, its summit lost in clouds that drift like prayers across the sky. The Highland landscape stretches endlessly before you, lochs gleaming like scattered silver coins, forests of ancient Scots pine and oak carpeting the valleys. You reach for your habit, the rough wool scratching gently against your skin. The fabric was dyed with madder root and woad, plants that grow wild on these mountainsides, their colors deep and earthy like the Highland soil itself. The wool comes from black-faced sheep, hardy creatures that have grazed these hills since before the Romans came. Their thick fleeces perfect for the harsh mountain winters. The monastery bell tower looms above you, built of the same gray granite that forms your cell walls. Inside hangs a bronze bell cast in the workshops of Iona, its voice deep and resonant, capable of calling the faithful from miles across the glen. But now it rests silent, waiting for the proper hour of matins. You step to your window, placing your palms against the thick stone sill. The granite is speckled with mica that catches even the faintest starlight, tiny mirrors reflecting the cosmos. This stone was formed deep in the earth's crust, compressed over millions of years, thrust upward by forces beyond imagination, and finally carved by glaciers that carved these very valleys during the last ice age. Below your window, the monastery garden spreads in terraced plots carved into the mountainside. Even in the pre-dawn darkness, you can sense the presence of the herbs and vegetables growing there. Rows of kale and neeps, hardy vegetables that thrive in the Scottish climate. Patches of healing herbs, meadowsweet for headaches, bog myrtle to ward off insects, elderflower for winter remedies. The garden walls are built of dry stone, fitted together without mortar in the ancient Highland tradition. Each stone chosen carefully for its shape and size, placed with the knowledge passed down through generations of Highland farmers and shepherds. The walls breathe with the seasons, expanding in summer warmth, contracting in winter frost, yet standing firm against the mountain storms. A soft sound reaches your ears, the distant lowing of Highland cattle in the pastures below the monastery. These ancient beasts with their long red hair and curved horns have grazed these hills since the Celtic tribes first settled here. Their milk provides cream for the monastery table. Their hide becomes parchment for copying sacred texts. Their very presence, a connection to the land that stretches back through millennia. The air in your cell carries the scent of centuries, stone dust and candle wax, the lingering fragrance of incense burned in evening prayers, the earthy smell of peat smoke from the kitchen fires, peat cut from the high moors, compressed over thousands of years from ancient heather and moss, burning with a smoke that speaks of deep time and patient earth. You move to your small wooden desk, carved from Highland oak by Brother Duncan, the monastery's carpenter. His hands shaped this wood with tools forged in the smithy below, iron hammered from ore dug from Highland mines, tempered in mountain streams that run cold, even in summer. The desk bears the marks of your daily labors, copying manuscripts, writing letters to distant monasteries, recording the simple events of monastic life. On the desk sits your inkwell, made from a ram's horn, filled with ink created from oak galls and iron, mixed with the precision that comes from years of practice. Beside it, quill pens fashioned from goose feathers, birds that nest on the locks below, their feathers gathered with gratitude, trimmed and cut for the service of God's word. Through the stone corridors of the monastery, you can hear the first stirring of the community, the soft shuffle of sandaled feet on stone, the whisper of habit against habit as brothers rise for prayer. The monastery follows the ancient rule of Saint Benedict, its rhythm as steady as the seasons, as reliable as the mountain itself. In the scriptorium down the hall, manuscripts wait in the darkness, books copied by hand, on vellum made from Highland calfskin, illuminated with pigments ground from local minerals, ochre from the iron-rich soil, lapis lazuli traded from distant lands, gold leaf beaten thin as gossamer. These books contain the wisdom of ages, psalms and gospel texts, treatises on healing herbs, records of monastic life stretching back to the abbey's founding. The monastery kitchen has been cold since Compline last evening, but soon Brother Kenneth will kindle the fires. The great hearth built of Highland granite, wide enough to roast a whole sheep, fitted with iron hooks forged in the monastery smithy. Peat will crackle to life, oak logs will catch flame, and the ancient dance of fire and food will begin again. In the larder, stores gathered through the Highland seasons wait in the darkness. Barrels of oatmeal, ground from oats grown in the glen below. Sacks of barley for brewing the small beer that sustains monastic life. Wheels of hard cheese made from the milk of Highland cows. Strings of onions hang from the rafters. Roots vegetables buried in sand. Preserves made from wild berries gathered on the mountainsides. The monastery chapel waits in perfect stillness. Its altar carved from a single block of Highland marble. veined with minerals that speak of deep earth and slow time. Candles stand ready for lighting, beeswax gathered from hives kept in the monastery gardens, their honey sweetening the simple fare of monastic meals. Above the chapel, the bell tower reaches toward heaven, its stones fitted so perfectly that not even Highland storms can shake them. Inside, bronze and iron mechanisms wait to mark the hours, gears and wheels crafted by smiths who understood both metal and time, their work as precise as prayer itself. You feel the mountain breathing around you, the slow rise and fall of stone and earth, the patient rhythm of a landscape that has endured ice ages and volcanic upheavals, that has seen the Romans come and go, that watched the first Celtic monks clear these hillsides for their primitive cells. The Highland dawn approaches slowly, painting the eastern peaks with the faintest touch of rose. Stars fade one by one into the growing light. The same stars that have watched over this monastery for nearly 9 centuries, that guided the first monks to this remote place, that continue to mark the hours of prayer and contemplation. In the monastery stable, Highland ponies shift quietly in their stalls. These sure-footed beasts carry supplies up the mountain paths. Strength and endurance legendary throughout Scotland. Their winter coats grow thick and shaggy, protection against Highland storms that can bury the monastery in snow for months at a time. The monastery well descends deep into the mountain, its water filtered through layers of granite and schist, emerging cold and pure, tasting of stone and sky. This water has sustained the community through all seasons, drought and flood. Its source hidden deep in the Highland aquifers, connected to springs and streams throughout the region. You can feel the weight of prayer that has soaked into these stones, centuries of devotion absorbed into the very granite, making the monastery itself a kind of prayer made manifest in stone and mortar. Each block placed with reverence, each arch raised in praise, the entire structure a hymn to the eternal. The mountains around the monastery hold their own ancient wisdom. Ben Nevis to the south, highest peak in Britain, its summit often lost in clouds that bring rain to the Highland glens. Sgur na Keach to the west, its knife-edge ridge cutting sharp against the sky. These peaks have watched the slow dance of geological time, the advance and retreat of glaciers, the rise and fall of human cultures. In the monastery cemetery, simple stone markers remember brothers who have gone before. Names carved in Highland granite, dates that span centuries, lives dedicated to prayer and service. Their bones now part of the mountain soil, their spirits absorbed into the eternal rhythm of this sacred place. The Highland wind carries stories from across the glens, the scent of heather from the high moors, the salt tang of distant seas, the smoke of peat fires from crofts scattered across the landscape. It whispers of ancient battles fought on these hills, of clan gatherings and Highland games, of shepherds and farmers who have worked this land for generations. You feel yourself becoming part of this timeless rhythm, your breath matching the slow pulse of the mountain. Your heartbeat synchronizing with the eternal. The monastery holds you like a mother's embrace, Stone walls offering protection from the world's chaos. Ancient prayers surrounding you with peace. The first bell of matins will soon sound, bronze voice calling the faithful to prayer. But for now, in these precious moments before dawn, you rest in perfect stillness, surrounded by stone and history, embraced by silence and stone. Your breathing slows, matching the patient rhythm of the Highland wind. Your eyelids grow heavy, weighted with the peace that comes from being exactly where you belong. The monastery settles around you like a gentle blanket, stone walls holding you safe, ancient prayers singing you toward sleep. The mountain breathes slow and steady, and you breathe with it. The stars fade into dawn, and you fade into the timeless peace of this sacred place. Your body relaxes into the simple cot. Your mind releases the day's concerns, and you drift into the deep, restful sleep that comes to those who dwell in the house of the Lord. Sleep comes soft as Highland mist, gentle as morning light on granite peaks, peaceful as the eternal silence of stone. Chapter 2: Matins, Whispered Prayers in the Dark. You wake to the gentle bronze voice of the monastery bell, its deep tones rolling across the Highland glen like distant thunder. The bell was cast in the workshops of Iona in the year 1203, its bronze mixed with tin from Cornish mines and copper from Highland quarries, creating a voice both powerful and sweet. The darkness is still complete. Stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns, the same constellations that guided Celtic monks to this remote place 8 centuries ago. Polaris hangs steady above the northern peaks. The Great Bear turns slowly around the celestial pole. Orion strides across the winter sky with his belt of 3 bright stars. You rise slowly from your wooden cot, feet finding the familiar cold of Highland granite. The stone floor has been worn smooth by countless generations of monks, their footsteps creating shallow depressions that mark the paths of centuries. Each depression, a prayer made manifest in patient stone. Through your narrow window, you can see lights beginning to flicker in the other cells, candles being kindled, oil lamps being trimmed, the monastery slowly awakening to the call of prayer. Each flame dances in the Highland wind that seeps through every crack and crevice, wind that has traveled over lochs and mountains, carrying the breath of the ancient earth. You reach for your woolen habit, the rough fabric scratching gently against a skin. This wool came from black-faced sheep that graze the high pastures, their fleece dyed with madder root that grows wild on the mountainsides. The dye gives the fabric its deep brown color, the color of Highland peat, of autumn bracken, of the rich soil that nurtures all life in these mountains. Your sandals are carved from Highland birch, wood that bends without breaking, that grows strong in the harsh climate of the mountains. The leather straps were cut from hides of cattle that grazed these very pastures, tanned with oak bark gathered from the ancient forests, creating footwear that connects you to the land with every step. The corridor outside your cell stretches away into darkness, lit only by the occasional oil lamp flickering in its stone niche. These lamps burn Highland whale oil, gathered from beasts that swim in the cold northern seas, their light, steady and bright, casting dancing shadows on walls worn smooth by centuries of passing hands. You join the quiet procession of brothers moving toward the chapel, feet shuffling softly on stone, habits rustling like autumn leaves. Brother Alistair walks ahead of you, his white hair gleaming in the lamplight, his steps steady despite his 80 years of Highland winters. Behind you, young brother Hamish moves with the eager energy of youth, his voice already humming the ancient melodies of matins. The chapel door stands open, carved from Highland oak by craftsmen who understood both wood and worship. The grain of the wood tells the story of centuries, each ring marking a year of growth, seasons of plenty and seasons of hardship, the slow accumulation of strength that comes from weathering Highland storms. Inside the chapel, candles flicker on the altar, their light reflecting off the polished Highland marble. This marble was quarried from the mountains themselves, veined with minerals that catch and hold the candlelight, creating a surface that seems to glow from within. The altar has been polished smooth by centuries of faithful hands, worn into curves that fit perfectly the gestures of prayer and praise. The chapel walls rise into darkness above, their stone blocks fitted so perfectly that not even Highland winds can find a crack. Each stone was chosen with care, shaped with tools forged in the monastery smithy, lifted into place with the combined strength of the community. The walls have weathered 9 centuries of Highland storms, earthquakes and floods, invasions and plagues, standing firm as the faith they shelter. You take your place in the choir stalls, wooden seats carved from Highland oak, each one shaped to fit the human form, worn smooth by centuries of prayer. The wood still holds the faint scent of the forest where it grew. Rain and sunshine, wind and snow, all absorbed into the grain, all released now in the warmth of human presence. The altar candles cast dancing shadows on the chapel walls, light and darkness weaving together like prayer and silence, like faith and mystery. These candles are made from beeswax gathered from hives in the monastery gardens, their honey sweetening the simple fare of monastic meals, their wax burning with a clean, bright flame that speaks of industry and devotion. Brother Columba stands at the lectern, his voice preparing to lift the ancient words of praise. The lectern is carved from a single piece of Highland oak, its surface worn smooth by centuries of sacred books, its eagle base spreading wings that seem ready to carry prayers to heaven. The wood grain swirls and eddies like Highland mist, like the movement of the Spirit in human hearts. The psaltery waits in Brother Columba's hands, its strings made from Highland sheep gut stretched across a frame of Highland birch. Each string has been tuned with the precision that comes from years of practice, creating an instrument capable of lifting human voices to heaven, of adding harmony to the ancient words of David the psalmist. You breathe deeply, tasting the air of the chapel. Stone dust and candle wax, the lingering fragrance of yesterday's incense. The faint scent of Highland flowers brought in for feast days. The air holds the accumulated prayers of centuries, the breath of countless monks who have stood in this very place, their devotion absorbed into the very atmosphere. The first words of Matins begin to rise, Latin syllables that have been spoken in this place for 800 years. Words that connect this Highland monastery to communities scattered across Europe, to Rome itself, to the eternal conversation between earth and heaven. Deus in adjutorium meum intende. God, come to my assistance. The words floating upward on clouds of incense, mixing with the Highland wind that carries them out across the glens, over lochs and mountains, to the very edges of the world. Your voice joins the others, adding to the ancient harmony that has sustained this community through all seasons, through plague and famine, through war and peace. The voices blend like Highland streams, joining to form a river, individual yet united, distinct yet harmonious, creating something greater than any single voice could achieve alone. The Psalms unfold like the Highland landscape at dawn, verse after verse, revealing new vistas of praise, new valleys of comfort, new peaks of joy. The words were written in distant Jerusalem, but they speak directly to the Highland heart, celebrating the same God who made both Mount Zion and Ben Nevis, who watches over sheep in Palestinian hills and Highland glens alike. Brother Alistair's voice rises above the others, strong despite his years, trained by decades of Highland weather and Highland prayer. His voice carries the wisdom of the mountains, the patience of stone, the endurance of Highland winters. When he sings of God's faithfulness, you hear the testimony of 8 decades of Highland life. Young Brother Hamish adds the bright clarity of youth, his voice like Highland stream water running over granite stones, fresh and clear and full of life. When he sings of God's mercy, you hear the hope of all who come to the mountains, seeking peace, seeking clarity, seeking the simplicity that comes from living close to stone and sky. The chapel walls seem to sing along, their stones resonating with centuries of prayer, absorbing the sound and giving it back enriched, deepened, made more beautiful by the weight of history. Each stone block has heard these words 10,000 times, has felt the vibration of human voices lifted in praise, has become itself a kind of prayer made manifest in Highland granite. Through the narrow chapel windows, you can see the first faint lightening of the eastern sky. Dawn approaches slowly in these Highland winters, creeping over the mountains like a gentle tide, painting the peaks with the faintest wash of rose and gold. The same light that illuminated the first monks to pray in this place, that will continue to illuminate prayers long after you have joined the brothers sleeping in the monastery cemetery. The incense rises from the altar censer, frankincense and myrrh mixed with Highland herbs, meadowsweet and bog myrtle, creating a fragrance that speaks of both earth and heaven, both this Highland place and the eternal realm. The smoke drifts upward through the chapel, carrying prayers on its ascent, carrying the breath of the community toward the throne of grace. You feel yourself becoming part of something larger, your individual voice, lost and found in the choir of voices, your personal prayer absorbed into the ancient rhythm of monastic praise. the boundaries between self and community begin to blur, between present and past, between earth and heaven, all dissolved in the eternal now of worship. The Latin words flow like Highland stream water, steady and sure, polished smooth by centuries of repetition, yet fresh with meaning each time they are spoken. Domine labia mea aperius. Lord, open my lips, and my mouth shall proclaim your praise. Words that transform the simple act of speaking into an offering of the heart. Candle flames dance in the Highland wind that seeps through every stone joint. Light and shadow playing across the chapel walls like the interplay of grace and human need, of divine love and human response. The flames seem to dance in rhythm with the prayers, bending and swaying like Highland grass, like the spirits of all who have prayed in this place. The monastery bell marks the passage of time, its bronze voice counting the moments of prayer, dividing the darkness into sacred portions, creating a structure within which prayer can flourish. Time becomes liturgical, measured not by the clock, but by the rhythm of praise, by the unfolding of ancient words that have shaped Christian hearts for 2 millennia. Brother Kenneth's voice adds the deep bass notes, rumbling like Highland thunder, steady as the mountains themselves. When he sings of God's strength, you hear the power of Highland storms, the force that carved these glens, the endurance that has kept this community alive through centuries of hardship and change. The chapel floor beneath your feet has been worn smooth by generations of kneeling, standing, processing, dancing the ancient choreography of corporate prayer. Each flagstone tells a story, quarried from Highland mountains, shaped by Highland masons, fitted together with the precision that comes from understanding both stone and spirit. You can smell the faint fragrance of Highland flowers pressed between the pages of the Great Psalter. Flowers gathered during summer walks in the high meadows, dried and preserved, adding their beauty to the beauty of illuminated manuscripts. Heather and wild rose, meadowsweet and bog cotton, the botanical heritage of these mountains pressed into eternal service. The antiphon weaves through the psalm verses, Latin melody that has been sung in this place since the monastery's founding, connecting today's prayer to 8 centuries of Highland devotion. The melody rises and falls like the contours of the Highland landscape, like the breath of God moving across the face of the deep, like the eternal song that underlies all creation. Through the chapel windows, stars begin to fade into the growing light. Venus hangs low on the eastern horizon, morning star heralding the approach of dawn, the same star that guided wise men to Bethlehem, that continues to guide all who seek truth in the darkness of the world. The prayer concludes with the ancient words of blessing, voices united in praise, individual spirits merged into the great prayer of the Church, the eternal conversation between heaven and earth that never ceases, that flows through this Highland monastery like stream water through Highland stone. As the final Amen fades into silence, you remain kneeling on the worn stone floor, feeling the weight of centuries of prayer settling around you like Highland mist. Like the presence of all who have knelt in this place, like the very breath of God moving through the ancient stones. Your breathing slows to match the patient rhythm of the Highland night. Your heartbeat synchronizing with the eternal pulse that underlies all creation. The chapel settles into silence around you, candle flames growing steady in the still air, shadows deepening into pools of peace. You feel yourself sinking into the deep quiet that follows prayer, the silence that contains all words, the darkness that holds all light. Your eyelids grow heavy with the peace that passes understanding, weighted with the blessing that comes from communion with the eternal. The monastery breathes around you, stone walls holding you safe, ancient prayers surrounding you with love. You drift into the timeless rest that comes to those who dwell in the house of the Lord, who find their home in the shelter of the Most High. Sleep comes gentle as Highland mist, soft as candlelight on granite walls, peaceful as the eternal silence that follows the last Amen. Chapter 3. Bread and Herds, a simple breakfast with the taste of the earth. You wake to the gentle sounds of the Highland morning, wind sighing through heather, the distant lowing of cattle in the glen below, and from the monastery kitchen, the soft sounds of Brother Kenneth preparing the morning meal. The darkness has lifted slightly, dawn spreading slowly across the Highland peaks like honey on warm bread. Through your narrow window, you can see Ben Nevis catching the first rays of sunlight, its granite face glowing rose and gold, its summit crowned with clouds that drift like incense across the Highland sky. You rise from your wooden cot, feet finding the familiar comfort of cold stone. The granite floor has absorbed centuries of Highland seasons, expanding in summer warmth, contracting in winter frost, yet holding firm, patient as the mountain itself. Each flagstone was cut by hand, shaped with tools forged in Highland smithies, fitted together with the precision that comes from understanding stone. The corridor outside your cell carries the fragrance of wood smoke and baking bread, scents that speak of hearth and home, of community gathered around shared tables, of the simple abundance that comes from living close to the earth. These aromas have filled the monastery corridors for 8 centuries, unchanged, eternal, as constant as the Highland seasons themselves. You join the quiet procession of brothers moving toward the refectory, sandals whispering on worn stone, habits rustling like autumn leaves. The refectory door stands open, carved from Highland oak that grew in the ancient forests, each grain line telling the story of Highland seasons, rain and drought, wind and snow, the slow accumulation of strength that comes from weathering Highland storms. Inside the refectory, long tables wait, their surfaces worn smooth by centuries of simple meals, scarred and stained by the honest work of feeding a community. These tables were hewn from Highland oak, each plank chosen with care, joined with wooden pegs cut from the same ancient trees, creating furniture that will outlast many generations of Highland winters. Brother Kenneth moves between kitchen and refectory, his arms laden with the morning's abundance. His face glows with the satisfaction that comes from work well done, from feeding others, from transforming simple ingredients into nourishment for body and soul. His apron is dusted with oatmeal flour, stained with berry juice, marked with the honest signs of Highland cookery. The great hearth dominates one wall of the kitchen, built of Highland granite, wide enough to roast a whole Highland sheep, fitted with iron hooks and cranes forged in the monastery smithy. The fire burns steadily, fed with peat cut from the high moors, mixed with oak logs from the monastery forests, creating heat that speaks of deep earth and patient trees. On the refectory tables, wooden bowls wait, carved from Highland birch, their surfaces polished smooth by centuries of use, stained golden by Highland porridge and Highland honey. Each bowl tells a story, shaped by hands that understood both wood and hunger, crafted with love for brothers not yet born, destined to nourish bodies and souls through all the seasons of Highland life. Beside each bowl sits a horn spoon, carved from the horns of Highland cattle, polished smooth by countless meals, comfortable in the hand as only tools shaped by use can be. These cattle grazed the monastery pastures, their milk providing cream for the community table, their horns transformed into implements of daily bread. Nothing wasted, everything sacred. Brother Kenneth emerges from the kitchen carrying a great iron pot, steam rising from its depths, the fragrance of Highland porridge filling the refectory air. This porridge is made from oats grown in the glen below the monastery, ground in the water-powered mill that has served the community for 6 centuries. Its stones still turning, still grinding, still transforming Highland grain into Highland sustenance. The oats were harvested in late summer, when the Highland sun hung long in the northern sky, when the monastery fields turned golden as Highland whiskey, as Highland honey, as the light that filters through Highland mist. These oats absorbed Highland rain and Highland sunshine, Highland wind and Highland soil, becoming part of the mountain itself, part of this ancient place. Into each bowl, Brother Kenneth ladles the steaming porridge, its surface creamy with Highland milk, sweet with Highland honey, rich with the taste of mountain pastures and Highland flowers. The honey comes from bees that work the monastery gardens, gathering nectar from heather and wildflowers, from meadowsweet and bog myrtle, creating sweetness from Highland summer, storing sunshine in Highland combs. The milk was drawn this morning from Highland cows, their thick coats streaming with Highland mist, their udders heavy with cream that speaks of mountain grass and mountain streams. These cows know every path and pasture around the monastery, their hoofprints worn deep in Highland soil, their presence as much a part of this place as the granite stones themselves. You take your place at the long oak table, worn smooth by centuries of monastic meals, scarred by countless Highland knives, stained by Highland ale and Highland wine. Your brothers settle around you. Brother Alistair, with his white hair gleaming in the firelight. Young Brother Hamish, with his eager smile. Brother Duncan, with his carpenter's hands. Each taking his place in the ancient rhythm of community life. The morning light filters through the refectory windows, narrow openings cut deep in Highland granite. Their sills worn smooth by generations of elbows, their glass wavy with age, creating patterns of light and shadow that dance across the refectory walls like Highland mist, like the play of sunlight on Highland water. Brother Columba stands to offer the blessing, his voice carrying the authority that comes from years of Highland prayer, from mornings exactly like this one, from the accumulated wisdom of Highland seasons. His words rise with the steam from the porridge bowls, with the smoke from the great hearth, with the breath of men gathered in grateful community. Benedic nos Domine. Bless us, O Lord, and these thy gifts, words that transform simple Highland fare into sacrament, that acknowledge the divine presence in oatmeal and honey, in Highland milk and Highland bread, in the gathered community that shares these gifts with grateful hearts. You lift your horn spoon, carved from cattle that knew these pastures, polished by hands that have shared countless Highland meals, and taste the porridge that speaks of home, of Highland seasons, of the patient earth that provides all things in their proper time. The oats are rich and nutty, sweet with Highland honey, creamy with Highland milk, warming you from within like Highland sunshine, like Highland love. From the kitchen comes the fragrance of fresh bread, loaves baked in the great stone ovens that have served the monastery for centuries. Ovens built of Highland granite, heated with Highland oak, filled with Highland grain transformed by Highland hands into the staff of life. The bread rises with Highland water, Highland salt, Highland air, becoming part of the mountain, part of this place of prayer. Brother Kenneth appears with wooden platters laden with the morning's bread, loaves dark with Highland rye, crusted with Highland oats, dense with Highland nutrition. Honest bread that speaks of soil and rain, of sunshine and wind, of the patient partnership between human hands and Highland earth. Each loaf bears the mark of the monastery's seal, pressed into the dough before baking, marking this bread as coming from this place, from this community, from these Highland ovens. The seal shows a Celtic cross surrounded by Highland heather, symbols that speak of faith rooted in Highland soil, of Christianity grown deep in Highland stone. You tear a piece of the warm bread, feeling its texture, dense and chewy, filled with Highland grain and Highland goodness. The crust crackles under your fingers, releasing steam that carries the fragrance of Highland barley, Highland wheat, Highland earth, transformed by fire into nourishment for Highland bodies, Highland souls. The bread tastes of everything that grew it, Highland rain and Highland sunshine, Highland wind and Highland soil, Highland seasons cycling through Highland time, creating flavor that cannot be replicated anywhere else, that speaks of this particular place, this particular blessing, this particular moment in the eternal cycle of Highland life. Brother Kenneth brings butter churned from Highland cream, pale yellow as Highland primroses, sweet as Highland clover, rich with the taste of mountain pastures where Highland cattle graze among Highland flowers, where Highland streams provide Highland water, where Highland sunshine creates Highland abundance. The butter melts on the warm bread, creating richness that speaks of Highland generosity, of Highland hospitality, of the abundance that flows from living in harmony with Highland rhythms, Highland seasons, Highland grace. Each bite connects you to the Highland landscape, to the cattle and grass and streams that created this simple abundance. From wooden jugs, Brother Kenneth pours fresh Highland milk, still warm from the morning milking, sweet with Highland flavors, rich with Highland nutrition, white as Highland mist, as Highland snow, as Highland clouds drifting across Highland skies. This milk carries the essence of Highland pastures, Highland flowers, Highland earth, Highland life. You drink deeply, tasting the Highland morning, Highland dew, Highland grass. Highland sunshine captured in Highland milk, transformed by Highland cattle into Highland nourishment. The milk coats your throat with Highland richness, Highland comfort, Highland love, made manifest in simple Highland abundance. On wooden plates, Brother Kenneth arranges Highland herbs gathered from the monastery gardens, tender leaves of sorrel and wild garlic, young shoots of nettle blanched in Highland water, early greens that speak of Highland spring, of Highland renewal, of Highland life returning to Highland earth after Highland winter's rest. The herbs add sharp Highland flavors to the simple meal, tastes that awaken Highland memories, Highland seasons, Highland connections to Highland earth. Each leaf carries Highland minerals, Highland sunshine, Highland rain, Highland life concentrated in Highland abundance, Highland blessing disguised as Highland food. Wild garlic bulbs roasted in Highland ashes add sweetness to the morning feast. Their cloves, soft and creamy, mild and nutty, transformed by Highland fire into Highland delicacy. These bulbs grew in Highland woodlands, among Highland bluebells, under Highland oak trees, absorbing Highland essence, Highland spirit, Highland love. Preserved Highland berries add color to the breakfast table. Cloudberries gathered from Highland moors, rowan berries from Highland mountain ash, bilberries from Highland heather, all preserved in Highland honey, stored in Highland crocks, waiting through Highland winter for Highland spring, for Highland mornings exactly like this one. The berries burst with Highland flavors, tart and sweet, wild and wonderful, tasting of Highland summer, Highland sunshine, Highland rain, Highland abundance gathered and preserved by Highland hands, Highland love, Highland care for Highland community, Highland future. You eat slowly, savoring each bite, each flavor, each connection to Highland earth, Highland seasons, Highland life. The simple food becomes communion, connection, conversation with Highland landscape, Highland history, Highland home. Each spoonful carries Highland stories, Highland memories, Highland dreams. A refectory fills with the gentle sounds of Highland breakfast, spoons scraping Highland bowls, Highland voices murmuring Highland blessings, Highland thanks for Highland abundance, Highland gratitude for Highland gifts, Highland joy and Highland community, Highland peace in Highland place, Highland home. Outside the refectory windows, Highland morning continues its slow awakening, mist rising from Highland locks. Highland cattle moving toward Highland pastures, Highland sheep following Highland paths worn smooth by Highland hooves. Highland seasons, Highland time, Highland rhythms as old as Highland stone. The meal concludes with Highland silence, grateful silence, satisfied silence, silence that speaks of Highland abundance, Highland gratitude, Highland love, Highland community fed and nourished, Highland souls sustained by Highland gifts, Highland bodies strengthened for Highland work, Highland service, Highland prayer. You feel Highland warmth spreading through your body, Highland nourishment becoming Highland strength, Highland peace settling into Highland bones, Highland contentment flowing through Highland veins like Highland streams flowing toward Highland sea. Your breathing slows to match the patient rhythm of Highland morning, your heartbeat synchronizing with the eternal pulse of Highland earth, Highland stone, Highland life. The refectory settles into comfortable silence around you, Highland voices growing quiet, Highland community resting in Highland satisfaction. The Highland breakfast sits warm in your Highland belly. Oats and honey, milk and bread, herbs and berries, all transformed into Highland energy, Highland strength, Highland peace. You feel connected to Highland earth, Highland seasons, Highland life, Highland love, Highland home, Highland belonging. Your eyelids grow heavy with Highland contentment, weighted with Highland satisfaction, blessed with Highland abundance. The monastery holds you like Highland mist, Highland warmth, Highland love, Highland home, Highland peace, Highland rest. You drift slowly toward Highland sleep, toward Highland dreams, toward Highland rest that tastes of Highland porridge, Highland honey, Highland milk, Highland bread, Highland earth, Highland home, Highland love, Highland peace. Sleep comes gentle as Highland morning mist, soft as Highland butter on Highland bread, sweet as Highland honey, peaceful as Highland silence, deep as Highland gratitude, complete as Highland home, Highland love, Highland rest. Chapter 4. Daily Labors, Bending to Nature and Prayer. You wake to the sound of Highland wind singing through the monastery gardens, a gentle melody that carries the scent of growing things, of Highland earth warming in Highland sunshine, of Highland life stirring in Highland soil. The morning has settled into its Highland rhythm, mist rising from Highland lochs, Highland cattle moving slowly through Highland pastures, Highland sheep following ancient Highland paths worn smooth by countless Highland hooves. Highland seasons, Highland generations of Highland life. Through your narrow window, You can see the monastery gardens spread in terraced plots carved into the Highland mountainside. Each terrace held by walls of Highland stone, fitted together without mortar in the ancient Highland way. Each stone chosen for its shape and size, placed with Highland wisdom passed down through Highland generations. You rise from your wooden cot, feet finding the familiar comfort of Highland granite, stone that has absorbed centuries of Highland prayer, Highland work, Highland life. The floor beneath your feet connects you to Highland mountain, Highland earth, Highland bedrock that supports all Highland life, all Highland growth, all Highland abundance. Your habit rustles softly as you move. Highland wool dyed with Highland plants, madder root and woad, colors that speak of Highland seasons, Highland earth, Highland abundance transformed into Highland beauty, Highland protection, Highland warmth for Highland work, Highland service, Highland prayer. The corridor outside your cell carries the sounds of Highland morning work beginning. Brother Duncan's hammer ringing in the Highland smithy, Brother Kenneth's footsteps in the Highland kitchen, Brother Alistair's voice humming Highland melodies as he tends Highland herbs, Highland voices, Highland work, Highland prayer made manifest in Highland action. You step outside into Highland morning air, air that tastes of Highland heather, Highland gorse, Highland wildflowers blooming in Highland abundance across Highland mountainsides. The air fills your Highland lungs with Highland freshness, Highland clarity, Highland energy for Highland work, Highland service, Highland love made manifest in Highland labor. The monastery garden spreads before you, a testament to Highland patience, Highland perseverance, Highland partnership with Highland earth, Highland seasons, Highland time. Each plot speaks of Highland planning, Highland wisdom, Highland love for Highland community, Highland future, Highland abundance shared in gratitude. Brother Alistair works among the Highland herbs, his white hair gleaming in Highland sunshine, his hands gentle as Highland mist, his voice humming Highland melodies that seem to encourage Highland growth, Highland flowering, Highland abundance. He moves between Highland rows with Highland knowledge, Highland wisdom earned through Highland seasons, Highland years of Highland partnership with Highland earth. "Good morning, brother," he calls softly, his voice carrying Highland warmth, Highland welcome, Highland love. The Highland parsley is ready for Highland harvest, and the Highland sage grows thick with Highland oil. Highland fragrance, Highland healing for Highland bodies, Highland souls. You join him among the Highland herbs, kneeling on Highland earth that has been enriched with Highland compost, Highland ash from Highland fires, Highland abundance returned to Highland soil, Highland cycle of Highland giving, Highland receiving, Highland gratitude, Highland blessing. Your hands find Highland parsley, leaves bright with Highland chlorophyll, Highland sunshine, Highland rain transformed into Highland nourishment, Highland medicine, Highland gift from Highland earth to Highland table, Highland bodies, Highland souls. The leaves release Highland fragrance as you gather them, Highland essence concentrated in Highland abundance. Highland sage grows in thick highland clumps, its leaves silvery with highland morning dew. Highland moisture that speaks of highland night, highland rest, highland renewal. Highland blessing falling gentle as highland love on highland earth. Highland gardens, highland abundance. The sage leaves are soft beneath your highland fingers, releasing highland oil that has healed highland bodies for highland centuries. Highland generations of highland wisdom. Highland care. Brother Alistair shows you highland thyme growing wild among highland stones. Tiny highland leaves concentrated with highland flavor. Highland medicine. Highland blessing disguised as highland weed. Highland abundance growing free in highland cracks. Highland crevices. Highland places where only highland love, highland patience, highland faith can flourish. This highland thyme, Brother Alistair explains, his voice soft as highland wind, grows strongest in highland adversity, highland hardship, highland difficulty. Its highland roots find highland nourishment in highland stone, highland cracks, highland impossible places, teaching highland lessons about highland faith, highland perseverance, highland love that grows strongest in highland trials. You gather highland thyme with highland reverence, understanding that each tiny highland leaf carries highland wisdom, highland strength, highland faith concentrated in highland abundance. The plants seem to offer themselves willingly. Highland generosity, highland love, highland blessing flowing from highland earth through highland hands to highland table, highland bodies, highland souls. Highland mint spreads in highland profusion near highland water. Highland stream that runs from highland spring deep in highland mountain. Highland water filtered through highland granite, highland schist, highland stone. Emerging highland pure, highland clear, highland blessed with highland minerals, highland life, highland abundance. The highland mint leaves dance in highland breeze, releasing highland fragrance that speaks of highland summer, highland abundance, highland joy, highland celebration of highland life, highland growth, highland blessing. You gather highland mint with highland gratitude, highland hands working in highland partnership with highland earth, highland seasons, highland abundance. Brother Duncan approaches from highland smithy, his highland face glowing with highland fire, highland work, highland satisfaction that comes from highland craft, highland skill, highland service to highland community. His highland hands bear highland marks of highland work, highland scars, highland calluses that speak of highland dedication, highland love, highland service made manifest in highland action. Brother Alistair, he calls, his highland voice carrying highland warmth, highland respect. The highland scythes are highland sharp, highland ready for highland harvest, highland cutting, highland gathering of highland abundance, highland blessing, highland gifts from highland earth to highland table. Brother Alistair nods with highland satisfaction, highland gratitude for highland partnership, highland community, highland cooperation that makes highland abundance possible, highland work, highland service, highland love shared among highland brothers, Highland friends, Highland family. Together you move to Highland grain fields. Highland oats growing tall in Highland sunshine. Highland barley, golden as Highland honey. Highland wheat, heavy with Highland kernels. Highland abundance waiting for Highland harvest. Highland gathering. Highland transformation into Highland bread. Highland nourishment, Highland life. The Highland grain waves in Highland wind. Highland music, Highland song, Highland praise, rising from Highland earth toward Highland heaven. Highland gratitude made manifest in Highland growth. Highland abundance, Highland blessing. Each Highland stalk carries Highland sunshine, Highland rain, Highland earth, Highland love, transformed into Highland nourishment. Brother Duncan demonstrates Highland scythe technique. Highland blade, moving through Highland grain with Highland rhythm. Highland music, Highland dance as old as Highland agriculture. Highland civilization, Highland partnership between Highland hands and Highland earth. Highland seasons, Highland time. His Highland movements are Highland smooth, Highland efficient, Highland beautiful with Highland practice, Highland dedication, Highland love. You lift Highland scythe, feeling Highland weight, Highland balance, Highland tool, crafted by Highland hands for Highland work, Highland service, Highland love. The Highland handle is smooth with Highland use, Highland oil from Highland hands, Highland sweat from Highland work, Highland dedication made manifest in Highland wood, Highland metal, Highland craft. Your first Highland strokes are Highland clumsy, Highland uncertain, but Highland grain falls anyway. Highland generous, Highland forgiving, Highland patient with Highland learning, Highland practice, Highland growth. Brother Duncan's Highland voice offers Highland encouragement, Highland guidance, Highland love expressed through Highland teaching, Highland patience, Highland faith in Highland potential. Gradually, Highland rhythm comes, Highland music, Highland dance between Highland blade and Highland grain, Highland partnership, Highland cooperation, Highland harmony between Highland hands and Highland harvest, Highland earth and Highland abundance, Highland work and Highland prayer, Highland service and Highland love. The Highland grain falls in Highland rows, Highland order, Highland beauty that speaks of Highland planning, Highland wisdom. Highland love for Highland community, Highland future, Highland abundance shared in Highland gratitude, Highland blessing, Highland gift from Highland earth through Highland hands to Highland table. Highland sun climbs Highland sky, warming Highland backs, Highland hands, Highland harvest, Highland love made manifest in Highland action, Highland dedication, Highland cooperation, Highland community working together for Highland abundance. Highland good, Highland sweat beads on Highland brows, Highland salt, Highland effort, Highland dedication flowing from Highland bodies engaged in Highland work, Highland service, Highland love. The Highland sweat tastes of Highland earth, Highland minerals, Highland life, Highland connection to Highland place, Highland home, Highland belonging. Highland birds sing Highland songs from Highland hedgerows, Highland music, Highland praise, Highland celebration of Highland harvest, Highland abundance, Highland blessing. Highland larks rise from Highland grain, Highland wings catching Highland sunshine, Highland light, Highland joy made manifest in Highland flight, Highland song, Highland celebration. Highland bees work Highland flowers growing wild among Highland grain, Highland partnership, Highland cooperation, Highland mutual blessing between Highland plants and Highland insects, Highland abundance, Highland life supporting Highland life, Highland blessing flowing through Highland creation, Highland love made manifest in Highland harmony. You pause to Highland rest, Highland breath, Highland gratitude for Highland strength, Highland health, Highland ability to Highland work, Highland serve, Highland love, Highland participate in Highland harvest, Highland abundance, Highland blessing, Highland community, Highland life, Highland water from Highland spring quenches Highland thirst, Highland blessing, Highland gift from Highland mountain, Highland earth, Highland generosity made manifest in Highland clarity, Highland purity, Highland refreshment for Highland bodies, Highland souls engaged in Highland work, Highland service, Highland love. The Highland water tastes of Highland stone, Highland minerals, Highland earth, Highland mountain, Highland connection to Highland place, Highland home, Highland belonging. Each Highland drop carries Highland blessing, Highland life, Highland abundance from Highland heart of Highland mountain to Highland lips, Highland bodies, Highland souls. Highland afternoon brings Highland shadows, Highland coolness, Highland relief from Highland sun, Highland heat. Highland intensity of Highland work, Highland harvest, Highland gathering, Highland abundance. The Highland shadows offer Highland rest, Highland pause, Highland gratitude for Highland progress, Highland accomplishment, Highland service, Highland love, made manifest in Highland action. Highland grain lies Highland gathered in Highland rows, Highland order, Highland beauty that speaks of Highland cooperation, Highland community, Highland love working together for Highland abundance, Highland blessing, Highland good. Each Highland row represents Highland hours, Highland effort, Highland dedication, Highland service, Highland love. Brother Alastair surveys Highland work with Highland satisfaction, Highland gratitude, Highland joy that comes from Highland service, Highland cooperation, Highland community working together for Highland good, Highland abundance, Highland blessing. His Highland eyes shine with Highland pride, Highland love, Highland gratitude for Highland partnership, Highland friendship, Highland brotherhood. Highland work well, Highland done, he says, his Highland voice carrying Highland approval, Highland gratitude, Highland love. Highland earth has Highland blessed us with Highland abundance, and Highland hands have Highland gathered Highland blessing with Highland gratitude, Highland love, Highland service to Highland community. You feel Highland satisfaction, Highland contentment, Highland peace that comes from Highland work well, Highland done, Highland service rendered, Highland love expressed through Highland action, Highland dedication, Highland cooperation, Highland partnership with Highland earth, Highland seasons, Highland blessing. Highland evening approaches with Highland gentleness, Highland mist, Highland softness that speaks of Highland rest, Highland peace, Highland gratitude for Highland day, Highland work, Highland service, Highland love, Highland abundance, Highland blessing received, and Highland shared. Your Highland body aches with Highland satisfaction, Highland tiredness, Highland contentment that comes from Highland work, Highland service, Highland love made manifest in Highland action, Highland dedication to Highland community, Highland future, Highland abundance, Highland blessing. Highland muscles, relaxed with Highland fatigue, Highland satisfaction, Highland peace that flows through Highland bodies engaged in Highland work, Highland service, Highland love. Your Highland hands bear Highland marks of Highland labor, Highland blessing, Highland connection to Highland earth, Highland abundance, Highland life. Highland sunset paints Highland sky with Highland colors. Highland beauty, Highland gratitude for Highland day, Highland work. Highland service, Highland love, Highland abundance received and Highland shared. Highland blessing, Highland gift, Highland grace. You walk Highland slowly toward Highland Monastery, Highland home, Highland rest, Highland peace, Highland gratitude, Highland satisfaction, Highland contentment flowing through Highland body, Highland soul, Highland spirit, blessed by Highland work, Highland service, Highland love, Highland day, Highland abundance. Highland stones beneath Highland feet welcome Highland return, Highland homecoming, Highland rest after Highland work, Highland service, Highland love. The Highland granite holds Highland warmth from Highland sun, Highland blessing, Highland gift, Highland comfort for Highland feet, Highland body, Highland soul. Highland Monastery walls rise Highland protective, Highland welcoming, Highland home offering, Highland shelter, Highland rest, Highland peace after Highland day of Highland work, Highland service, Highland love, Highland abundance, Highland blessing, Highland gratitude. Your Highland breathing slows with Highland contentment, Highland satisfaction, Highland peace that comes from Highland work well, Highland done, Highland service rendered, Highland love expressed, Highland abundance shared, Highland blessing received, and Highland given. Highland peace settles into Highland bones, Highland muscles, Highland spirit tired with Highland satisfaction, Highland work, Highland service, Highland love. Your Highland eyelids grow Highland heavy with Highland contentment, Highland gratitude, Highland blessing, Highland peace. Highland rest comes Highland gentle as Highland mist, Highland soft as Highland evening, Highland deep as Highland gratitude, Highland complete as Highland love, Highland service, Highland work well, Highland done, Highland abundance, Highland shared, Highland blessing, Highland received. Sleep flows Highland peaceful as Highland stream, Highland quiet as Highland evening, Highland deep as Highland mountains, Highland blessed as Highland work, Highland service, Highland love, Highland rest, Highland peace, Highland home. Chapter 5. Evening at the Monastery, the light of the last candle. You wake to Highland twilight, that magical Highland hour when Highland day surrenders slowly to Highland night, when Highland mist rises from Highland lochs like Highland prayers, like Highland incense, like Highland breath of Highland earth, ascending toward Highland heaven. The Highland sun hangs low above Highland peaks, painting Highland sky with Highland watercolors, rose and gold and lavender. Highland beauty that speaks of Highland peace, Highland rest, Highland gratitude for Highland day, Highland work, Highland service, Highland love, Highland abundance received and Highland blessed. Through your narrow Highland window, you can see Highland candles beginning to flicker in Highland cells throughout Highland Monastery. Tiny Highland flames dancing in Highland evening air, Highland lights that speak of Highland community, Highland prayer, Highland peace, Highland preparation for Highland night, Highland rest, Highland dreams. You rise slowly from your Highland wooden cot, Highland feet finding Highland familiar comfort of Highland granite, Highland stone that holds Highland warmth from Highland day, Highland sun, Highland life, Highland love, Highland work, Highland service, Highland blessing, Highland abundance shared and Highland received. Your Highland habit rustles softly in Highland evening air. Highland wool that carries Highland scent of Highland work, Highland herbs, Highland earth, Highland abundance, Highland blessing, Highland connection to Highland place, Highland home, Highland belonging, Highland peace. Highland corridor outside your Highland cell whispers with Highland evening sounds. Highland sandals on Highland stone, Highland voices murmuring Highland prayers, Highland gratitude, Highland peace, Highland preparation for Highland night, Highland rest, Highland dreams, Highland communion with Highland divine, Highland eternal, Highland love. The Highland refectory glows with Highland candlelight, Highland flames dancing in Highland evening air, Highland light that speaks of Highland warmth, Highland welcome, Highland community gathered for Highland evening meal, Highland abundance, Highland blessing, Highland gratitude, Highland love shared among Highland brothers, Highland friends, Highland family. Highland tables bear Highland evening fare, Highland bread baked fresh in Highland ovens, Highland cheese aged in Highland caves, Highland ale brewed from Highland barley, Highland water, Highland patience, Highland time, Highland love transformed into Highland nourishment, Highland blessing, Highland gift for Highland community, Highland souls, Highland bodies. Brother Kenneth moves Highland gracefully between Highland kitchen and Highland refectory, his Highland face glowing with Highland satisfaction, Highland service, Highland love made manifest in Highland food, Highland nourishment, Highland care for Highland community, Highland brotherhood, Highland family, Highland home, Highland soup steams in Highland bowls, Highland vegetables from Highland gardens, Highland herbs gathered by Highland hands, Highland water from Highland spring, Highland fire from Highland hearth, Highland love simmered into Highland warmth, Highland comfort, Highland nourishment for Highland souls, Highland bodies, Highland spirits. The Highland soup tastes of Highland earth, Highland rain, Highland sunshine, Highland care, Highland abundance transformed by Highland hands into Highland blessing, Highland gift, Highland nourishment that speaks of Highland place, Highland home, Highland belonging, Highland peace, Highland bread torn from Highland loaves releases Highland steam, Highland fragrance, Highland promise of Highland nourishment, Highland satisfaction, Highland blessing. The Highland bread carries Highland grain, Highland water, Highland salt, Highland fire, Highland love baked into Highland abundance, Highland gift, Highland blessing for Highland community. Highland ale flows Highland golden in Highland cups, Highland barley transformed by Highland time, Highland patience, Highland craft into Highland refreshment, Highland blessing, Highland gift that speaks of Highland seasons, Highland harvest, Highland abundance, Highland gratitude, Highland celebration of Highland life, Highland community, Highland love. Highland cheese adds Highland richness to Highland meal. Highland milk transformed by Highland time. Highland patience. Highland craft into Highland nourishment. Highland blessing. Highland abundance that speaks of Highland pastures. Highland cattle. Highland care. Highland love. Highland generosity of Highland earth. Highland community. Highland sharing. Highland evening meal proceeds in Highland silence, Highland peace, Highland gratitude, Highland appreciation for Highland abundance, Highland blessing, Highland gift from Highland earth through Highland hands to Highland table, Highland community, Highland souls, Highland bodies nourished by Highland love, Highland care, Highland service, Highland candle flames dance in Highland evening air, Highland light that speaks of Highland warmth, Highland welcome, Highland peace, Highland preparation for Highland night, Highland rest, Highland dreams, Highland communion with Highland divine, Highland eternal, Highland love that underlies all Highland life, Highland abundance, Highland blessing. After Highland evening meal, Highland community gathers in Highland Chapel for Highland Vespers, Highland evening prayer, Highland gratitude for Highland Day, Highland work, Highland service, Highland love, Highland abundance received and Highland shared, Highland blessing, Highland peace, Highland rest approaching, Highland chapel glows with Highland candlelight, Highland altar candles flickering, Highland steady, Highland flames that never Highland die, Highland light eternal, Highland presence, Highland love made manifest in Highland wax, Highland fire, Highland brightness, Highland warmth, Highland welcome, Highland peace. Highland voices rise in Highland evening praise, Highland gratitude, Highland prayer, Highland psalms that have Highland echoed through Highland centuries, Highland generations, Highland seasons of Highland faith, Highland love, Highland service, Highland community, Highland prayer, Highland peace, Highland rest, Highland blessing. Magnificat anima mea dominum. My Highland soul magnifies Highland Lord. Highland words rising with Highland incense. Highland smoke. Highland prayers. Highland gratitude. Highland praise for Highland day. Highland abundance. Highland blessing. Highland love received and Highland shared. Highland community. Highland peace. Highland antiphons weave through Highland psalm verses, Highland melody ancient as Highland stones, Highland mountains, Highland earth, Highland faith, Highland love, Highland community, Highland prayer, Highland peace that passes Highland understanding, Highland rest, Highland blessing, Highland grace. Brother Columba's Highland voice carries Highland authority, Highland wisdom, Highland peace earned through Highland years of Highland prayer. Highland service, Highland love, Highland dedication to Highland community, Highland faith, Highland peace, Highland rest, Highland blessing, Highland grace, Highland home. Highland evening light filters through Highland chapel windows. Highland stained glass that paints Highland prayers with Highland color. Highland beauty, Highland blessing, Highland gift from Highland craftsmen, Highland artists, Highland lovers of Highland beauty, Highland truth, Highland goodness, Highland peace, Highland rest. Highland incense rises from Highland altar censer, Highland frankincense, and Highland myrrh mixed with Highland herbs. Highland meadowsweet, Highland lavender, Highland fragrance that speaks of Highland earth, Highland heaven, Highland communion, Highland love, Highland rest. Highland prayers conclude with Highland blessing, Highland peace, Highland preparation for Highland night, Highland rest, Highland dreams, Highland communion with Highland divine, Highland eternal, Highland love that sustains all Highland life, Highland abundance, Highland blessing, Highland community, Highland peace, Highland home. Highland community disperses Highland quietly. Highland brothers returning to Highland cells. Highland private prayer. Highland reading. Highland contemplation. Highland preparation for Highland night. Highland rest. Highland dreams. Highland peace. Highland communion with Highland love. Highland eternal, Highland divine. in your Highland cell. Highland candle flame dances, Highland gentle. Highland light that speaks of Highland presence. Highland peace, Highland love. Highland blessing, Highland grace. Highland rest approaching, Highland night. Highland dreams, Highland communion with Highland eternal. Highland divine, Highland love. Highland breviary lies, Highland open on Highland wooden desk. Highland pages illuminated by Highland candlelight. Highland words that speak of Highland faith. Highland love, Highland peace, Highland rest, Highland blessing, Highland grace, Highland eternal, Highland divine, Highland presence, Highland home. Highland window shows Highland stars emerging in Highland evening sky. Highland lights eternal. Highland distant, Highland beautiful, Highland mysterious. Highland connections to Highland infinite. Highland eternal, Highland divine. Highland love that encompasses all Highland creation. Highland blessing, Highland peace. Highland wind sings Highland softly through Highland heather. Highland gorse, Highland wildflowers. Highland melody, ancient as Highland mountains. Highland earth, Highland time, Highland seasons, cycles of Highland life. Highland death, Highland resurrection, Highland eternal, Highland love, Highland peace. Highland Monastery settles into Highland evening rhythm. Highland peace, Highland rest, Highland preparation for Highland night. Highland dreams, Highland communion with Highland divine. Highland eternal, Highland love, Highland blessing, Highland grace, Highland home, Highland belonging. Your Highland breathing slows to Highland match Highland evening. Highland peace, Highland rest approaching, Highland night, Highland dreams. Highland communion with Highland love, Highland eternal, Highland divine, Highland blessing, Highland grace, Highland peace. Highland candle flame grows Highland steady in Highland still air. Highland light that speaks of Highland presence. Highland peace, Highland love, Highland rest, Highland blessing, Highland grace, Highland eternal, Highland divine, Highland home, Highland belonging, Highland peace. You feel Highland gratitude flowing through Highland body. Highland soul, Highland spirit blessed by Highland day, Highland work, Highland service, Highland love, Highland community, Highland abundance, Highland blessing, Highland peace, Highland rest, Highland home. Highland peace settles Highland deep in Highland bones. Highland muscles, Highland gratitude for Highland day, Highland work, Highland service, Highland love, Highland abundance received and Highland shared. Highland blessing, Highland community, Highland peace, Highland home. Highland eyelids grow Highland heavy with Highland contentment. Highland satisfaction, Highland peace, Highland gratitude, Highland blessing, Highland love. Highland rest approaching, Highland night, Highland dreams, Highland communion with Highland divine, Highland eternal, Highland love. Highland candle flame flickers Highland once, Highland twice, Highland gentle farewell to Highland day, Highland work, Highland service, Highland love, Highland abundance, Highland blessing, Highland community, Highland peace, Highland rest, Highland dreams approaching, Highland darkness embraces Highland cell, Highland Monastery, Highland community, Highland mountains, Highland earth, Highland creation, Highland peace, Highland rest, Highland blessing, Highland love, Highland grace, Highland eternal, Highland divine, Highland presence, Highland home. Sleep comes Highland gentle as Highland mist, Highland soft as Highland candlelight, Highland deep as Highland mountains, Highland peaceful as Highland prayers, Highland blessed as Highland community, Highland love, Highland service, Highland rest, Highland dreams, Highland peace. Highland Monastery breathes Highland softly in Highland night. Highland walls holding Highland community safe. Highland prayers, Highland peace, Highland rest, Highland dreams, Highland communion with Highland divine, Highland eternal, Highland love, Highland blessing, Highland grace. You drift Highland slowly into Highland sleep, Highland rest, Highland dreams, Highland peace, Highland communion with Highland love, Highland eternal, Highland divine, Highland presence, Highland blessing, Highland home, Highland belonging, Highland peace, Highland rest. Highland night embraces Highland gently, Highland love, Highland peace, Highland rest, Highland dreams, Highland blessing, Highland eternal, Highland divine, Highland presence, Highland home, Highland belonging, Highland peace, Highland love, Highland rest. Sleep flows Highland deep as Highland locks, Highland quiet as Highland prayer, Highland peaceful as Highland mountains, Highland blessed as Highland love, Highland service, Highland community, Highland dreams, Highland peace, Highland home. Highland dreams carry Highland visions of Highland beauty, Highland peace, Highland love, Highland blessing, eternal, Highland divine, Highland presence, Highland home, Highland belonging, Highland peace, Highland rest, Highland love. In Highland sleep, Highland spirit finds Highland rest, Highland peace, Highland communion with Highland divine, Highland eternal, Highland love, Highland blessing, Highland grace, Highland home, Highland belonging, Highland peace, Highland dreams, Highland rest. Highland Monastery sleeps, Highland community rests. Highland mountains stand Highland eternal watch. Highland love encompasses all. Highland blessing flows. Highland grace sustains. Highland peace reigns. Highland home embraces. Highland rest. Highland dreams. Highland love. Sleep. Highland deep. Highland peaceful. Highland blessed. Highland love. Highland rest. Highland peace. Highland home. Highland dreams. Highland eternal. Highland divine. Highland presence. Highland blessing. Highland grace. Highland grace. sleep. Highland love. Highland peace. Highland rest. Highland home. Highland dreams. Sleep. Highland peace. Highland love. Highland rest. Sleep. Highland peace. Highland love. Sleep. Highland peace. Sleep.